Is pride heavier than a wrench? The flag rope clicked against the pole outside the town office, tapping like a nervous clock. The young clerk scoffed. "It's just a patch," he said, and the laughter stuck to the walls like dust. Still, when the lights above flickered and fell silent, the old mechanic only looked at his sleeve, the faded threads catching a thin slice of sunlight like a heartbeat remembered. Anyway, quiet men leave echoes too. The town maintenance office still smelled faintly of oil and paper dust. Folding chairs creaked as volunteers settled in jackets brushing against the backs of metal seats. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like tired bees. Daniel Rowe stood near the end of the table, cap in hand. 63, a lifetime of grease on his knuckles. He'd come because the memorial generator was failing again. "Figured I'd take a look before the weekend," he said, voice rough but steady. "Wouldn't want the ceremony to go dark." A younger clerk, Lyle Bates, clipboard in arms, snorted. "That old rig's past saving. Maybe time we buy new instead of calling in another patch job." His gaze drifted down Daniel's sleeve. A frayed bit of fabric caught the light, an olive-green service patch, edges silvered by age. Lyle grinned, quick and careless. "It's just a patch," he said, loud enough for the room. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel exactly, just easy. The kind that rolls off people who don't know what silence costs. Daniel's hand rested on the patch for a moment. "Guess it's held better than most things," he murmured. The mayor shifted his papers. "We appreciate the offer, Mr. Rowe, but the city has procedures. Let's file it through purchasing first." Lyle added, "Yeah, protocol and all that. SM lock evidence. Social pressure." Daniel felt the air tighten around him. He was pinned by procedure, nothing more than an old gear left turning after the motor had changed. He nodded once. Understood. No one noticed him gather his worn cap, or how carefully he avoided the coffee urn crowd. Only Ruth Carter from the diner across Main Street watched as he stepped out into the hall. Outside, the late afternoon sun turned the windows to mirrors. His reflection looked older than he remembered, creased, quiet, patient. He adjusted his jacket thumb, brushing the threadbare patch stitched by his wife decades ago. From inside came a short buzz, then a pop. The fluorescent tubes flickered, stuttered twice, and went dark. Murmurs rose, chairs scraped. Someone joked about bad wiring. Daniel only paused in the doorway, half smiling to himself. He knew the hum of a dying ballast by heart. Silent beat, he placed his hand over the patch, feeling the coarse threads under his palm. The hallway smelled of cold metal and rain through vents. For a breath, he just stood there, listening to the quiet, the way some men listen to prayer. Ruth's voice floated from the meeting room. "Maybe get Daniel to check it anyway." The clerk laughed again, uncertain this time. Daniel turned his cap in his hands. "Light always tells the truth," he said softly, almost to no one. Then he stepped into the wind that rolled down Main Street, leaving the flicker of the dead bulbs behind. Morning sunlight slanted through the dusty windows of Daniel Rowe's garage, touching rows of wrenches like notes on a dull piano. A radio hummed from the corner, soft brass from another century. The air smelled of oil, metal, and coffee. The knock on the side door was timid. Mr. Rowe. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. "Come on in, door sticks a bit." A girl stepped through, backpack slung, low microphone clipped to her collar. "Clara Nguyen, Millhaven High. I'm doing a project, local heroes, ordinary folks who help the town." "Can't say I fit that poster," Daniel said, smiling. "You're looking for someone else." She looked around, taking in the shelves of parts, the grease stains on the floor, the radio's slow trumpet line. "Actually, my teacher said you fixed the memorial lights last year." "That counts, doesn't it?" Daniel shrugged. Just keeping things running. Her eyes landed on his sleeve. That patch? What's it from? He glanced down at the faded olive square, threadbare but neat. This old thing, from a unit long gone, keeps the jacket from falling apart. It's kind of cool, she said. My dad collects patches. He says each one tells a story. Daniel chuckled. Then he's got a lot of stories to dust. Humor line. Round here, he added, even the engines gossip. Clara laughed, setting her recorder on a stool. Mind if I record, long as you don't make me sound smarter than I am? The radio crackled. He leaned over an open engine, motioning her closer. Listen. Hear that ticking? She frowned. Yeah, like it's nervous. Not nervous, he said. Just offbeat. See, machines talk different. If something's right, it doesn't shout. It hums. Clara nodded, notebook balanced on her knee. So you listen more than you talk? Mostly. Talking's overrated. Listening now, that keeps the town running. A shaft of gold light broke through the high window. Dust swirled between them, tiny stars in the quiet. Silent beat. She glanced at the wall where photos curled slightly under the corners of old tape. One caught her eye, a group of young mechanics in faded uniforms, a sign above them reading Nightingale Unit, 1987. Each man wore the same patch Daniel did. Is that you? She asked, pointing. He followed her gaze, his smile dimming to something softer. Yeah. Long time ago. What was the Nightingale Unit? Daniel hesitated, wiping his hands again, though they were already clean. Maintenance team overseas. We kept the lights on when others had bigger things to worry about. She studied the picture. And that's why you fixed the memorial generator. Guess some habits don't quit, he said. The radio song ended. Static filled the room for a breath. Clara raised her eyes toward the photo once more. The patch on the man's shoulder caught the light the same way Daniel's did now. Then she noticed a small caption scribbled beneath the frame, faded but clear enough. Nightingale Unit, 1987. And for a moment, the engine stopped ticking, as if it too were listening. The sky above Millhaven Park carried the color of old tin. Wind pressed against the pop-up tents where the town committee checked clipboards and muttered over budgets. The bronze soldier statue waited in the center, its face streaked by drizzle. Daniel Rowe stood beside the memorial light pole, testing the wiring through a handheld meter. The patch on his jacket, faded, stubborn, caught the weak sun whenever the clouds shifted. Clara balanced her camera near the benches, careful not to get rain on the lens. Is the power line supposed to hum like that? She asked. Means it's alive, Daniel said. Means it remembers. A deep voice cut through the air. Remembering's fine, long as it doesn't blow a fuse. Commander Travis Hale strode over crisp shirt beneath a town-issued windbreaker. He'd retired with medals and now ran the Veterans Week committee like a drill. You the mechanic? Hale asked. Just keeping the lights steady, Daniel replied. Hale looked him over, eyes narrowing at the patch. You're just the grease man, not command. Stick to sockets. The words hung heavier than the rain. Clara froze mid-recording. The hum of the meter faltered. Guy number 2, public humiliation. Daniel straightened, wiping his palms on a rag. Storms making the lines jumpy. Might need a ground reset before the event. Storm Hale repeated with a smirk. You worry about the weather, I'll worry about ceremony. A quiet voice joined them. Elias Hart, white-haired scarf, tucked into his coat. He'd once taught auto mechanics at the high school the same year Daniel came back from service. Elias's tone was mild. Careful, Commander. He's fixed more than engines, son. Hale laughed once sharp. We'll see what he fixes when the rain hits. He turned away, calling orders to the others under the tent. Clara lowered her camera. That was awful, she whispered. Daniel only checked the meter again, numbers steady but low. Some folks don't like what reminds them they're human. The wind rose, fluttering the taped-up event posters along the lamppost. One edge tore free, slapping softly against the metal flap, pause flap. Silent beat. He adjusted the plug housing, tightening a screw, as thunder muttered beyond the ridge. Storm's coming sooner than you think, he said. Clara frowned at the horizon. You mean the weather? Daniel glanced toward Hale, now shouting about ribbon colors. All kinds of weather. Elias nodded, pulling his collar higher. He'll learn. They always do. The first drops hit the pavement like typewriter keys. People scattered for cover, clipboards clutched to their chests. Daniel stayed by the pole until the voltage reading blinked green. The light at the top flickered once, then steadied, a single halo against the gray. He smiled faintly, rain seeping into the seams of his jacket. Lights don't lie, he said. Cliff rain lashed against the war memorial like handfuls of gravel. The park's lights flickered once, twice, then died. Darkness rolled through Millhaven, swallowing every street from Main to the ridge. Only the red glow of an emergency lantern pulsed weakly beside the bronze statue. Clara's voice cracked through the storm. The power's out. Everything's out, Commander Hale shouted from beneath a tarp. Stay clear of the wiring. Nobody touch anything until I give the word. But panic was louder than orders. Volunteers scrambled, shouting, slipping on the wet pavement. Daniel Rowe jogged up the path, his jacket soaked through, cap pulled low. His breath came in small, steady clouds. Generators fried a fuse, he said, checking the panel with a flashlight. I'll handle it. You'll do no such thing, Hale barked. This is city property, not your shop, Semlock's evidence. Hale was slammed by protocol, pinned by his own pride. Daniel didn't answer. He crouched beside the machine, hands trembling from the cold, but moving with calm precision. Clara Light. Here, he said. The girl knelt beside him, shielding the flashlight from the rain. Bolts, wires, coils, all small things, all stubborn. The smell of wet metal filled the air. These old models hate humidity, Daniel muttered, but they like respect. Hale paced behind him, drenched arms crossed. You'll make it worse. We need regulation equipment. Daniel smiled faintly. Sometimes the manual forgets what people remember. He stripped a bit of wire with his pocket knife, looped it around the terminal, and reached for the flywheel handle. The patch on his sleeve caught the beam of Clara's light, glinting gold and green through the rain. The first crank failed, only a dull click. He tried again. The second turn groaned like a breath drawn through rust. Clara bit her lip. It's not catching, not yet, Daniel said, voice steady. Engines need faith, same as folks. The third pull roared. The generator coughed once, twice, then caught. A rush of light swept across the square. Flood lamps flared one after another, chasing the darkness off the wet bronze faces and puddled ground. Symbolic turn, proof reveal, every bulb burned bright. The patch gleamed on Daniel's arm, a small flag of color in a world gone white. Hale froze mid-stride, the rain streaming down his cap. His voice faltered, swallowed by the sudden hum of power. Then the commander stood in silence. No applause, no shouts. Only the steady thrum of restored light and the hiss of rain on hot metal. Clara wiped her cheeks, unsure where the water ended, and tears began. You did it, she whispered. Daniel just shook his head. We did what needed doing. The town's reflection shimmered in the puddles, every lamplight mirrored twice. The memorial plaque glowed with a faint halo, the engraved words finally visible for those who kept the lights alive. Clara looked at Daniel, her face wet with rain and awe. Somewhere behind them, Hale bowed his head, and under the relentless rain, the generator purred like an old hymn rediscovered. Morning returned to Millhaven with the smell of wet asphalt and brewing coffee. The storm had rinsed everything clean, the sidewalks, the flag above the memorial, even the air. Inside Ruth's diner, the morning crowd spoke in quiet tones, the kind reserved for after something sacred. Ruth Carter wiped the counter with a damp cloth. The radio hummed a soft gospel tune, its static curling at the edges. Steam drifted up from mugs lined in front of her regulars, truckers, clerks, 2 old men from the library board. The hum of conversation dipped as Elias Hart stepped inside a thin folder tucked under his arm. He greeted Ruth with a nod. "Got something you might want to see." She raised an eyebrow. "Hope it's not another permit form. I just got through the last storm report." "Not this time." Elias opened the folder on the counter. Inside lay a few weathered pages stamped and yellowed, the service record of Sergeant Daniel Rowe Nightingale, Unit 1987. Ruth leaned close. "Well, I'll be." He tapped the faded signature at the bottom. "Found it in the county archive. He never told anyone. Maintenance and signal corps, he kept field comms running for an entire division when their power grid failed. Same pattern as last night." The bell above the door jingled. Commander Hale entered. The diner quieted like someone had turned down the volume knob. Hale removed his cap, rain dripping from the brim. He scanned the faces, Ruth, Elias, a few townsfolk, and then the folder on the counter. "I heard," he said. His voice was rougher than usual, quieter too. He kept the lights on. No one spoke. He didn't make a speech, didn't salute. He just stood there a long moment, looking at the old patch, printed in the corner of the service photo, and nodded once before sliding into a booth. Clara sat by the window, notebook open but untouched. She watched as Ruth poured a fresh pot of coffee, moving slower than usual. The steam rose and fogged the stainless steel surface of the counter. "Silent beat," Ruth finally said. "Town should have known sooner." Elias gave a small shrug. He didn't do it to be known. From the far booth, Hale spoke again, voice nearly lost under the clink of dishes. "If I'd listened yesterday," Ruth cut him off gently. "No use polishing what already shines, Commander." He gave a wry smile. "Then maybe I'll just buy his coffee next time." Elias chuckled, turning toward Clara. "Guess free coffee's the town's highest medal." Humor line. The diner filled with a soft ripple of laughter, brief but real, the kind that warms rather than hides. Ruth reached under the counter, pulling out that morning's newspaper. The front page photo showed Daniel beside the memorial jacket, dark with rain light glowing behind him. The headline read, "Mechanic restores power and more at Veterans Park." Ruth placed the paper near the sunlight streaming through the blinds, smoothing it flat with her palm. "He'll hate this kind of attention," she said softly. Elias nodded. "All the good ones do." Outside, a truck engine rumbled past, splashing through the last of the puddles. The light caught the diner's window sign. Open since 1954, and cast a reflection across the counter, mingling with the steam. Clara turned towards the window. Across the street, she saw Daniel by the garage door wiping down his jacket. The patch, still damp from the storm, caught the morning sun and gleamed faintly gold. Cliff. She smiled, pen poised above her notebook. "He kept the lights on," she whispered, repeating Hale's words, like a headline meant only for herself. Morning came soft and gold over Millhaven Park. Dew glistened on the flag ropes and the polished bronze of the memorial statue. The smell of damp grass mingled with brewed coffee from the concession stand. Volunteers moved quietly, setting up folding chairs for the Veterans Day ceremony. Daniel Rowe stood near the generator, housing one hand resting on its cool metal frame. It purred now, steady as a heartbeat. The patch on his jacket had dried overnight, its stitching rough but firm. Clara approached, carrying a folded note and a small wooden frame. She still wore her press badge from the high school newspaper, though it hung lopsided. "They said you should sit up front," she told him. "I've had my share of front rows," he said with a gentle smile. "These chairs are better for watching." She hesitated, eyes dropping to the patch. "You're not wearing it today." He nodded, slipping out of his jacket. The morning air touched the scars of old oil stains on his sleeves. It's time it stood for something new. He held the jacket out to her. "Keep it clean and keep it kind." Clara blinked. "Me?" "You're the one who listened," he said. "That's where every fix starts." Proof object. Legacy transfer. She accepted the jacket as though it might break. The patch caught the sunlight again, just enough to show its shape before she turned toward the memorial. The new brass plaque gleamed on its base, the engraving still bright from polishing. She pinned the patch beside it, careful, reverent. The threads shimmered faintly in the wind. Commander Hale stood a few feet back, cap in hand. No medals today. No speech. Only silence. Then he straightened, lifted his hand to his brow, and held it there, a single unannounced salute. Tidal echo stood in silence. Ruth Carter and Elias Hart joined from behind the crowd. Ruth carried a tray of paper cups, steam curling upward. She whispered, "Figured coffee's the right way to honor him." Elias smiled. He'd say it's the only way. The town fell still as the church bell began to ring in the distance, slow, deliberate, each tone folding into the next. Clara looked at Daniel. "They're calling it the Nightingale Light now," she said quietly. "In the paper." He laughed softly. "Sounds prettier than generator." "You don't mind names fade," he said, "but light that keeps its shape." Silent beat. A breeze swept across the square, catching a loose scrap of paper that had fallen from Clara's folder. It danced once over the wet grass before settling at Daniel's feet. He bent to pick it up. On it, written in a steady hand, were the words, "Some honors don't need applause." He folded the note gently, placing it beneath the plaque's edge. "Guess that about says it all." The generator hummed a low harmony under the bells. Clara slipped the jacket around her shoulders. It fit a little big, but felt exactly right. People began to drift away, the day unfolding into Aaron's breakfast life. The memorial lights stayed on even as the sun climbed higher, their glow soft but unyielding. Daniel remained for a while longer, watching the reflections ripple across the puddles. Hale gave one last nod before turning down the path, hands in pockets. Ruth's voice carried from the distance. "Coffee's hot if you change your mind." Daniel smiled, eyes still on the patch. "Might take you up on that," he murmured. Quiet closure. The air was full of small sounds, wind through flags, faint laughter from the diner down the street, and the church bell's final echo fading into morning. He adjusted his cap, exhaled once, and walked toward the lighted park gate. If this story moved you, share it forward. The morning light slipped through the diner window, catching the chrome edge of a coffee cup and the folded jacket resting beside it. Outside, Daniel paused at the park gate, where the patched plaque gleamed beneath the oaks, and Hale, Ruth, and Clara watched from a distance. No speeches, just quiet nods that carried farther than applause. Still, the hum of the generator under the memorial felt like a heartbeat passed on a steady promise that kindness can outlast command, like a lamp left burning in a winter window. The wind turned a small note pinned near the plaque, and its words fluttered once before settling again. Some honors don't need applause.